The passenger who wasn't lost? My name is James Rodriguez, and I'm 35 years old. I work as a rideshare driver for Uber and Lyft in New Orleans, Louisiana. And the night I picked up a passenger during a severe thunderstorm who claimed to know exactly who I was and where I lived is the night I realized that some people have been watching you far longer than you ever realized they were watching. Before I begin, if you drive for rideshare, always check your doors are locked when you arrive at a pickup location. Keep listening, because the passenger I picked up that night wasn't requesting a ride to get somewhere. They were requesting a ride because they already knew exactly where I was. And this was the moment they had been waiting for. I had been driving rideshare for about 4 years. It was decent money when I was consistent with it. I would work evenings and nights picking up people who needed rides across the city. Most of the passengers were fine. Normal people going to dinner or home from work or to the airport. Some were drunk people going from bars to homes or hotels. Some were party groups going to various entertainment venues. It was mostly uneventful work. Drive someone somewhere, get paid, move on to the next passenger. I lived in an apartment in the Marigny neighborhood. It was a decent place. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a balcony that overlooked the street. I worked enough to pay my rent and to have some money left over for living expenses. The work was flexible, which I liked. I could work when I wanted. I could decline rides if I didn't want to accept them. It gave me control over my schedule. On Thursday night, the weather was getting bad. The forecast had mentioned a severe thunderstorm moving through New Orleans. Wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour. Heavy rain. Possible hail. Possible flooding in low-lying areas. Most drivers were probably going to stay home or go home early. But I decided to work. The surge prices during storms were higher. People would pay more for rides during bad weather. The money was better. So I logged into the app and started accepting rides. By 8 o'clock, the rain had started. It was coming down hard. The wind was pushing my car around on the roads. The lightning was flashing across the sky. The thunder was rolling through the city. But the surge prices were high. 3 times normal. 4 times normal in some areas. It was worth driving in this weather. I picked up my first passenger around 8:15. A woman in the downtown area who needed to get to the Garden District. She was pleasant. She tipped me. She didn't want to make conversation, just wanted to get to her destination safely. I drove her carefully through the storm. The roads were getting wet. Some were starting to flood in the lower areas. I navigated carefully and got her to her destination. By 9 o'clock, the storm had intensified. The rain was so heavy I could barely see the road in front of me. My wipers were on the highest setting, and they could barely keep up. I considered calling it a night. I considered going home. But I had another ride request. A pickup in the French Quarter, not far from my apartment. I accepted it. I navigated toward the pickup location. The app showed the pickup address. It was a residential area on the edge of the quarter, close to where I lived, actually. I drove carefully through the storm. The streets were mostly empty. Most people had the good sense to stay inside during weather like this. But I was out here driving because the money was good, and I needed the money. I arrived at the pickup location around 9:30. It was a building I knew, an old colonial-style house that had been converted into apartments. I pulled up in front. I waited for the passenger to come out. The app said the passenger was arriving. I waited and waited. 3 minutes passed. The passenger still hadn't come out. I checked the app. The passenger had requested the ride. The pickup location was confirmed. I was in the right place, but no one was coming out of the building. I called the passenger. The phone rang a few times and then went to voicemail. I waited another minute. Still nothing. I was about to cancel the ride when someone appeared. A figure emerged from the darkness of the building. They were walking toward my car. The figure was a person. I couldn't see clearly who it was because of the rain and the darkness and the distance. But someone was definitely coming toward me. The passenger was arriving. I unlocked the doors. The passenger opened the back passenger door and got in. I couldn't see them clearly at first because the interior lights of the car were dim. But as they settled into the seat, I got a better look. It was a man. He was maybe in his 50s. He had dark hair turning gray. He was wearing a dark jacket. He was soaking wet from the rain. I said, "Where are you going tonight?" The man said he didn't have a specific destination. He said he just wanted to ride around for a while. He said he needed time to think. He said he'd pay the surge price, whatever it was. I said, "Okay." That was unusual. Most passengers had a destination. But some people just wanted to ride and talk. Some people were processing something and used the ride as a way to clear their head. I'd accommodated it before. I asked him which direction he wanted to go. He said, "Just drive." He said, "Go toward the lake." He said, "Take the longer route." He said, "Don't go home yet." That statement made me pause. Don't go home yet. How did this passenger know I was planning to go home? How did he know my intentions? He didn't know me. He didn't have any way of knowing what I was planning to do after this ride. I tried not to read too much into it. Maybe he was just making conversation. Maybe he was just saying that I should take the long way instead of the shortest route. Maybe it was just coincidence. I started driving. I drove toward the direction of the lake. I drove through the storm. The passenger was quiet for a while. He wasn't making conversation. He was just sitting in the back seat. I could see him in the rearview mirror. He was staring out the window at the rain and the darkness and the occasional lightning flashes. He looked sad. He looked like someone carrying something heavy. After about 10 minutes of driving, the passenger finally spoke. He said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No." I said, "I don't know my passengers unless they tell me." He said, "My name is Richard Chen." He said, "I'm wondering if that name means anything to you." The name didn't mean anything to me. I told him that. I said, "I don't know who you are." He said, "That's okay." He said, "Most people wouldn't remember me." He said, "I was just someone they knew a long time ago." He said, "I'm the person whose life you destroyed." My heart rate increased. I felt a chill. I didn't know what he was talking about. I tried to think. Did I know someone named Richard Chen? Had I wronged someone in my past? My mind was racing through possibilities. I said, "I don't understand." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "When you were in high school, there was a boy named Richard Chen. He said he was quiet. He said he wasn't popular. He said he kept to himself mostly. He said, but there was one day when he was vulnerable. He said he opened up to someone. He said he trusted someone with something very personal. And he said that person betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. He said that person spread rumors about him. Rumors that destroyed his reputation. Rumors that made his high school experience a nightmare. I was trying to remember. Was there a Richard Chen in my high school? There were so many students. Had I done something to someone named Richard Chen? I felt like I should remember, but the memory wasn't coming to me. I said, "I don't remember doing anything like that." He said you wouldn't remember. He said to you it was just something fun to do. He said to him it was the worst year of his life. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I was being tested or judged by someone in my own car. Someone who had paid money to sit in my car specifically to tell me something I'd done wrong. The fact that he had deliberately chosen my ride. The fact that he had known I was going to go home. The fact that he seemed to know things about me that suggested this was premeditated. This was planned. I said, "Where am I supposed to be taking you?" He said, "I told you." He said, "Take the longer route." He said, "Drive." But I was scared. I was uncomfortable. I said, "I don't feel safe with this conversation." I said, "I'm going to ask you to get out of my car." He said, "Okay." He said, "That's fair." He said he just needed to tell you what you did. He said he needed you to know that it mattered. He said the person you hurt 15 years ago is still dealing with the consequences. I pulled over. I told him to exit the vehicle. He got out of the car. I watched him in the rearview mirror. He stood on the sidewalk in the rain. He didn't seem angry. He seemed sad. He seemed like someone who had finally said what he'd been needing to say for a long time. He closed the car door. I locked it. I drove away. I canceled the ride in the app. I didn't wait for him to do anything or say anything else. I just drove. I drove home. I was shaken. I was afraid. I was disturbed by the encounter, but I also felt something else. I felt guilt, because now that he'd mentioned it, I was starting to remember. I was starting to recall a boy named Richard Chen from high school. I was starting to remember spreading rumors about him. I was starting to remember why I had done it and how it had affected him. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about that encounter. I couldn't stop thinking about Richard Chen. I tried to find him online. I searched social media. I found him. He was a therapist now. He worked with teenagers and young adults dealing with trauma and social issues. He had a website. He had testimonials from clients talking about how much he had helped them. But underneath all of that professional success, I sensed the same sadness I'd seen in the back of my car, the same heaviness, the same weight of something he was carrying. And I realized that what he'd said was true. I had damaged him. I had been part of a group of people who had made his life miserable. And he had spent years building a life and a career and helping other people deal with trauma, perhaps in part because he understood trauma so deeply. I thought about sending him a message. I thought about apologizing. But I wasn't sure if an apology would help. I wasn't sure if he wanted to hear from me. I decided to just let the encounter be what it was. A moment when someone from my past appeared and made me confront something I'd done and had tried to forget. But here's what haunts me about that night. Here's what I think about every time I work as a driver. The fact that Richard Chen was able to request my ride. The fact that the rideshare app allowed him to find me without my knowledge. The fact that he had been tracking my location. The fact that he had engineered this encounter so carefully. It makes me understand that I was not random. This was not a chance meeting. This was someone who had decided that they needed to confront me and had planned the entire thing. And the scariest part is this. The scariest part is knowing that anyone I wronged could do the same thing. Anyone I hurt could request my ride. Anyone I bullied or betrayed or damaged could be sitting in the back of my car waiting to tell me about it. Anyone from my past could find me through the rideshare app and arrange this kind of confrontation. I've thought about quitting driving rideshare. I've thought about finding different work. But I also know that this could happen in any job. This could happen anywhere. As long as I'm a public figure in any way, as long as I interact with strangers, as long as I'm accessible, there's a chance that someone from my past could appear and make me account for something I've done, so I keep driving. But I'm more careful now. I'm more aware of my passengers. I'm more attentive to anything that seems unusual or off. I'm more alert to the possibility that someone might have booked me, not because they need a ride, but because they have something they need to say. The thunderstorm that night was severe. It was the kind of weather that brought out unusual behavior. It was the kind of weather that created situations where people made decisions they might not normally make. And it was the kind of weather that provided cover for Richard Chen to finally confront me about what I'd done. And I think about what would have happened if I hadn't asked him to leave the car. What if I had let him talk more? What if I had let him tell me his full story? What if I had actually listened instead of just hearing words coming at me? Maybe I would have understood better. Maybe I would have felt deeper remorse. Maybe I would have found a way to actually make amends instead of just feeling guilty. But I was scared. I was defensive. I was uncomfortable. And instead of confronting what I'd done, I just drove away. And now, I'll never know what Richard Chen wanted to tell me. I'll never know what more he needed me to understand about the impact of my cruelty. I'll only know that someone from my past was able to find me and sit in my car and tell me that I had hurt them, and that no amount of professional success or good deeds on my part could undo that damage. The rideshare app connects drivers and passengers in ways we don't fully understand. It allows people to move through a city. It allows people to be transported from one place to another. But it also allows people to find each other. It allows people to locate someone they might have lost touch with. It allows people to engineer encounters that might not happen in normal circumstances. And every time I accept a ride request, now I wonder if this is someone from my past. I wonder if this is someone I hurt. I wonder if this is someone who has been waiting for the right moment to confront me. And I'm careful. I'm alert. I'm prepared for the possibility that someone might get in my car and tell me something I don't want to hear. Because that night in the rain, in the middle of a severe thunderstorm, Richard Chen taught me something about accountability. He taught me that you can't escape your past. He taught me that people remember the harm you caused them, even if you forget. He taught me that someone might be watching. Someone might be waiting. Someone might be planning the moment when they finally tell you what you did to them. And the scariest part of all is that I deserved it. I deserved to have someone confront me. I deserved to face what I had done. I deserved to understand the impact of my cruelty. And instead of accepting that deserved confrontation, I just drove away into the rain and tried to pretend it hadn't happened. But it did happen. And I can never unhear what Richard Chen said to me that night. I can never unknow that I hurt someone so deeply that they spent 15 years processing that hurt. I can never pretend that my words and my actions don't have consequences. And every time it rains in New Orleans now, every time I see the storm clouds gathering, I think about that night. I think about the passenger in my back seat. I think about the person I hurt and the fact that they finally told me about it. And I think about how scary it is to understand that the past is never really past. That people you've wronged are still out there. and that they might be watching, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the thunderstorm, waiting for the moment when they can finally get in your car and tell you what you did to them.